Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. My name is James Bacon and I'm here to interview Kelly Buehler and Norman Cates, chairs of this year's WorldCon CoNZealand. And we'll get straight into that. But thank you all for joining us. So Kelly and Norm. Well, Kelly, how was that? How was the WorldCon?
That was quite something.
Oh!
Yeah.
I felt like roadkill afterwards, but
how long have you? Do you still feel the after effects of just the effort of running such a large convention?
For
a
me,
little bit, yeah. I mean, I'll get real and personal here for a minute. It was really quite stressful for me, and I had to deal with a lot of things that were difficult to deal with. And part of what happened for me personally is that I had a nervous breakdown, and I was not functioning well or in a very good mental space for quite some time. I had to take some time away. And fortunately, I know some people who live in remote places up north with no internet or cell phone coverage. And for me, that was a nice place to be for a while to try and pull myself together. But I just wanted to say that that's real. I know a lot of people had warned me that you can get some sort of a post-event depression. That's just because there's such a big chunk of what you've been doing with your life missing. But yeah, that was the reaction I expected, but not the one I got. But
thank you for sharing.
I'm doing better now, and it's weird. I mean, I know that that's not an experience that a lot of people have had, and it's sort of like, it feels like things get hard sometimes in your life, but you're always somehow able to pull yourself together and push yourself through the things that you need to do. And it's like that ability goes away. And you're just sort of flailing, and it's scary and it's hard, and you kind of wonder if you're going to be able to pull yourself back together enough to be able to do the things that you need to do to be a functioning adult human. But I've got a supportive partner and, yeah, a good doctor. So it's all good. But yeah, it's a real thing.
Okay, well, again, thank you for sharing that. It's very personal, but it's really good to hear it. Sorry, Norm, go ahead. How have you been feeling?
No, you're good.
No,
yeah, I had a similar experience. I was able, not able, but I was straight. I said, oh yes, so I have a WorldCon, and a couple of weeks later I'll be fine. Because I mean, I was kept busy by having to do work. That's okay, but yeah, just the motivation and it became a struggle to look at email or anything, because, and let's face it, this was an extraordinary year as well. Never mind running a WorldCon or being all the rest of the things going on. Any two of the things happening, we all have things happening in our lives. I had 5 or 6 things going on, and it was I think I was talking to Kelly a little afterwards, and I think she described it as sort of PTSD in many ways. It became one of those things where you couldn't, it was really hard to just do things. And Linnell will Linnell, chatted to Linnell about this, and she will agree that yes, I definitely went AWOL. But also I just have to say thank you to our vice chairs for keeping things together while we were going wibble afterwards. So that's a very good, that's part of the support mechanisms. I think it's very useful. But yeah, it was literally 2 or 3 months later that, you know, sort of feeling a lot better about it. But the thing that reminded me, you know, actually I was, you know, as everyone was streaming in and we're seeing people's faces, I was like, you know, regardless of anything else, running a Worldcon is hard. Running any big event is hard, but the reward is hello, here we go. The reward is all of you, who are, you know, in a community of amazing people. Anyway.
Yeah, I think part of how I could tell that I was, you know, pulling myself back together and all was just like right afterwards, it was like, okay, I've never really understood somebody gaffeating because this is my family, this is my home, these are my people. But I totally get it now. I want out. I want to go hide under the bed. I don't ever want to see any of these people again. And now it's like, I'm happy to see you. And I think I no longer feel like I never want to be at a Worldcon again. And so I feel like that's part of how I know I'm getting over the whole thing.
So
yeah, it's very like that. Sorry, James.
So let's take you back, if you don't mind, to let's say February, March time, a very crucial point in your bid. Norma,
Yes.
when did you start actually bidding? Can you remind us all?
Well, about what would it be? A little over 10 years ago,
Okay.
September 2010.
And at what stage, Kelly, what time did you join the team?
It's kind of hard to
13,
say. I was there from 2010, but I wasn't as active. And yes, so it's
So
kind of
both of you had spent 9 years, let's say, up to the beginning of this year, and working on the convention, which you had a vision of and which you shared and people understood and knew. And then you had this cataclysmic pandemic.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest.
Can you take us back there and think about the time of the change? Could you talk us about that?
One of the hardest things was that we had just gone through a big deal that Norman and I had worked on together, which was an attempt to make sure that the vision in everybody's brain was the same as the vision in our brain. We'd done a whole bunch of work to make sure that we were all picturing the same end space so that we were all working together towards the same thing. And then we decided to throw that in the trash. It was quite hard because, you know, I'm an analyst. That's how I deal with everything. So I had analyzed everything and, you know, we were looking at, we could cancel it, but that would be bad. We could try to move it to December, which is like as far as we could move it in the year that we had won. But we didn't have any reason to believe that things would be solved by then, and then we would be at the last minute with no wiggle room and would end up having to cancel then. So it seemed like the best thing for us to do was to try to figure out how to do this virtually. And I know recently I had to go back through a bunch of old emails trying to find some information. And one of the things that I found was my little folder of angry emails from fans telling us that we were completely overreacting and this whole thing would be blown over by July. And why didn't we just suck it up and whatever? So that was a little bit vindicating.
Yes, well, as you can see, we're not in Montreal, are we? So yes, you know, obviously, in retrospect, normally people often say, well, in hindsight, it's an easier decision to see what should have happened. But making that decision wasn't as easy as deciding just to go virtual, was it? That wasn't a quick.
No.
Was that a quick decision for you, or how long what was the process?
Well, so about I can't remember the exact date, but we had a exec meeting, and we basically said, look, we think we have to just, we think we're going to have to go virtual. And we did discuss, literally, we did discuss whether we needed to go to our wonderful, I keep saying it again, to our wonderful committee and div heads and say, look, we have to move it virtually. But we called an emergency meeting as soon as we could, which was probably 2 or 3 days later. And, you know, we said, look, this is what we think we have to do. And we discussed it. And in that meeting, you know, we talked, everyone talked, I think we went back and forwards, we sort of said, this is why we think we have to do this. And ultimately, at the end, we took a vote, and there's a screenshot. Oh, I'd have to find it now, but there's a
Getty
screenshot.
took a screenshot for us.
Yeah, of all the
Of-
ticks of people saying, yes, we should do this.
Of the unanimous yes vote. Yeah, I
Yeah, it
have.
was-
I've saved that too.
Yeah, I've got it. And that was one of the things that that I think really solidified in my mind that there are plenty of things at an event like this that you have to say, look, this is the way we have to do it. But if you can, then getting the buy-in from everyone is so important. You know, and sometimes you can't because things have to shift and you have to do things. But you know, yeah, the beauty of volunteer events like this is that everyone has skin in the game. Everyone's there to try and do the best thing they can. And, you know, sometimes, you know, obviously we're pulling different directions or whatever. That's part of what what any event is actually. But, you know, a decision like that could justifiably have just been taken by the exec and just gone, no, we just have to do that. I'm very glad that we were able, you know, in this case, to actually have the discussion. And, you know, I think that helped a lot with people's ability to just, because basically at that meeting everyone said okay, and then people came up with ideas and there were all sorts of things around. I think some people like had been thinking about the possibility earlier and so had been sort of working through some ideas and so on. Yeah, that was an extremely stressful couple of weeks. Just as a very tiny little thing in there, similar to what one of the things that you know, so all of this was going down, we went into lockdown, was working at home and so on. And one of the things was 2 or 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with, you know, sort of a mild depression, but it was depression. It was controlled with tablets. I was lucky. The first thing they gave me worked. Yay. And so as all this was coming down, I said, okay, I should make sure, because I'd been tailing off because I was, you know, it seemed it was fine. Got some more. And in that period, I was so busy with things and getting on with so many things. I realized after there was a week, at the end of the week, I was awful. I could not attend an exec meeting. I was just awful. And I realized I had not been taking my pills. So I don't say this as a poor me, pity, whatever, but I'm just saying, if you got to do it, you take the pills. And, you know, I wasn't, you know, there's no way I'm ashamed of taking it. It's just that certainly in this case, absolutely had to bring it all back up again.
Yeah, your brain is probably your most important muscle. You need to keep it fit.
I hope so.
And whatever you need to do to keep it fit is really important.
Yeah.
And we should come back to mental health maybe later on. But thinking about this pivot now, Kelly, can you share with us any of the sort of the decisions that you made about how you would go from being in-person event to being virtual? Like, what were there any particular mechanics that you feel were new? Obviously, was it all new? What did you
I think that Discord was a game changer, because Discord was the thing that allowed us to hold on to that social, to be able to see a friend in a public space and go chat to them. The part that we were so afraid of losing and going virtual. So the fact that it was new to most of us, and It's not a flat learning curve. It's a thing. We really, really, really wanted to do more to try to help people get into Discord and learn to use Discord so they'd be more comfortable, but we really just didn't have the manpower. You know, we had hoped to do some more events just in Discord ahead of time, maybe a couple of chats or parties or things like that, just to let people have their initial scary experience not at Worldcon. But we just didn't have the bandwidth to have the things that we wanted to have run in Discord ahead of time.
I can imagine why not.
It was really great that we were able to partner with the Fantasy Network and use their expertise in this area to help us do it well. Those guys were amazing. And I mean, just one example of how amazing they were is at the end, they were like, hey, don't feel any obligation to pay this because this is money that we spent just, you know, being supportive people of in the community. But here's a list of the $10,000 we spent trying to make your event better. And we did pay it. But they didn't have any expectation of that, and they just went forward and did what they felt was the right thing, and I think that's amazing. We're in a position to not have to leave them out on a limb there. We could cover all of their expenses and send a bottle of whiskey along as well.
Or 3.
And the Fantasy Network, like they're what you were trying to achieve there, which, you know, a lot of, obviously here we've just got Zoom breakout rooms and everything else, but you were trying to achieve more than just that. I like what you were you being driven? You say you wanted to give us people as much of an experience as possible. Like, did it feel like you were covering new ground, even as conventions were happening around you virtually?
Yeah, because most of the virtual conventions that were happening, they didn't have things like award ceremonies. You know, that was something we had to work out. And a lot of the virtual conventions that I've attended as a professional, they're all very sterile, and there's no free speaking, hanging out stuff, and there's no bumping into people, and it's all very rigid, and you get sort of, I don't know, gate showed along into you're going to do this and then you're going to do that. And the thing about Worldcon, one of the things that makes it great is that it's a choose your own adventure with too many choices. That's the thing the too many choices is the thing we love and complain about. So we didn't want to end up in a situation where we were taking that out of it. Really, the thing that drove our decisions was, you know, we can do this or we can do that. What is more like an in-person Worldcon? What is most like an in-person Worldcon? And that doesn't mean doing the same thing. Sometimes it means doing a completely different thing because it gives the feel. And it's really spending a lot of time analyzing, you know, the feelings that you get, the situations that you find yourself in, and then trying to figure out how do I set up for that feeling or that situation in an online area. And
there's pages of analysis and mental charts and things like that of you know, kind of how, you know, how we want these things to work. Because I mean, you know, at the moment, any virtual experience, you know, even the one we had, Discord, whatever, it's not, you know, it's not an in-person event. Yeah, that's the reason we go to conventions, is because we want to be able to wander down a corridor and wave madly at someone you haven't seen in ages. You know, it's the family reunion every year kind of thing. I've heard it described, and that's very accurate as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so some of that was trying to figure that out. Like our exhibits team, some shortly into it said, hey, we're going to build a virtual space, and they did. And there was this, they created this model of the interior of the hall where we were going to have the exhibits, and you could wander around it a bit, and occasionally, and they even had little cards. You had little avatars, so if you were wandering in there at the same time as someone else, you actually could see that they were there. And it was and to me that's the first step, I think, in this kind of thing. I mean, because that's what I want. If you're gonna have a virtual event, I want to be able to wander around and sort of see people to a certain extent. I know it's hard, but
Also, as well as exhibits,
yeah,
you'd be quite the show person. I would always have said. I don't know why that comes across from previous interactions. Like, was it important to you both to make sure that you were putting on a show? Like, I have to say, when you went the opening ceremony with that empty space, was I could barely watch that. That was really, I can't imagine, like, how did that feel at that time?
I think I can't remember who I said,
thing.
but yeah, but the sorry, filming was, the thing is also, we shifted other ways to do things as well, which I thought was really interesting, because there's maybe ways that can be applicable to in-person events later on as well. Who knows? The one thing we did say, actually, I have to say, going into this, was that we were not really going to try and do a mixed virtual and in-person thing. We did think about it, but it actually complicates it an immense amount. And you actually do wind up with two separate events, because they really can't interact properly with each other. So that was something, and I think that's a pretty common thing when people try and do that. So I mean, there's absolutely a place for it, but just that's something to be aware of, that it's a difficult thing to have those two worlds properly interact. And we did think quite a lot about that.
So Kelly,
But yeah, we had to shift. Sorry, we had to shift things. Like for instance, we decided that we wanted to do our Sir Julius Vogel Awards, which is the New Zealand Awards, as an in-person event, because we could at the time. Because when we get closer, it was like, yeah, okay, so people can actually come to the event, because then it's a special event for the people. But we decided we needed to do that a week ahead of time, from when the announcement would be. So we had to say, hey, come along, but could you just keep a lid on it until a week later, and then the world will see what this was. So it's things like that you kind of have to go back to people and go, this is what we think we have to do. Sorry, we know it's not ideal, but here we go.
And Kelly, how was that for you, doing these larger items beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the Vogel Awards was great. The event itself was a lot of fun. It was lovely to have, the at the business meeting, the guy who designed the retro Hugo, he was there, and he brought a retro Hugo, and so we were all kind of posing with it and stuff. That was fun. But I think, to me, one of the most heartbreaking things of our whole event was that the main thing we really wanted to do is make sure that everybody who was nominated for an award felt honored. And we didn't end up doing that the way that we wanted to do that. And that was just a heartbreaker for me. Every decision that I made was made from the point of view of, will that make them feel honored? Will that? And I didn't get to make all of the decisions. I tried to push that feeling through, but everybody ended up feeling dishonored in some way, and that's very sad to me. I wish that the retro Hugos and the Vogel Awards being shown end to end didn't make the Vogel Award nominees feel disrespected, and I wish that
A
the
few.
Hugo Awards
Not
didn't
everyone. But, yeah.
make people feel disrespected. It was never what we wanted. I mean, I was personally not very involved in the Hugo Awards themselves. That was one of Norman's things. And I know that we had talked to George and he'd said he wanted to do a short ceremony. So when I saw what we got, I was a little surprised. And, you know, I was watching it in a room full of fans. We showed that after the business meeting on the screen in the hotel. So that was an experience. But yeah, I just wish that we'd been able to do a few things a little bit differently so that people could have felt more respected. And at the same time, you know, I did have some stern talks with some big name industry professionals about whether one punches down at volunteers when they're feeling upset. And I think that we might have some people a little bit better behaved in the future. Not sure. People who you would be shocked didn't know that they were viewed as bullies. Told me that they were absolutely surprised to hear that people think they're bullies because they punch down at volunteers when they're upset.
A number of comments have gone by saying they don't think everyone felt in any way dishonored, and I was a nominee for an award and I didn't feel that you dishonored me in any way. So I appreciate though that, you know, there's a lot of people to keep happy. So before we walk away from
Actually,
this,
sorry,
sorry,
just one thing. The thing that, and this is all to do with what we were just talking here. The thing that has kept me going, and I've shared with, and I hope other people as well, over this 10 years, has been something that oh shoot, oh my god, chair of NorrisCon 4, her name's gone out of my head. Thank you. That Deb said, and this is something, thank you, Leanne, and something that always kept in my mind is that if you run a bad Worldcon, thousands of people will hate you. If you run a good Worldcon, hundreds of people will hate you. And that is just, you know, for whatever reason, and you just have to keep, you know, I know that actually sounds a bit depressing, but the thing is, it actually applies to everything you do in public in life. Anything you do that involves thousands of people, there are going to be many more people are going to be happy about it, but there are going to be people who aren't. And okay, you have to go, well, you have to examine what it is and try and fix it or do better next time or whatever. But I'm afraid that kept me going, was you cannot please everyone. And I think Kelly mentioned something, I think in one of our conversations before this, was when you know, sometimes if you make, a lot of times you make the decision, you just have to stick to it. I think, Kelly, that's what you were talking about with, you know, when we said, hey, we need to move the convention virtually, is that, you know, we had to, because we couldn't keep changing our direction, because that can be worse than just sticking to it and going, you know, maybe at the end of July, everything would have been fine and we wouldn't have had to be virtual. But you know, as it happens, that was the right decision. But the thing is that making that decision and sticking to it, I think would still have been the right decision.
And do you think that's about leadership and direction, or leadership and disagreement about direction? What do you think about the interaction?
Yes.
It's hard to say. I mean, I know that there are some some things we decided to do that were not popular choices, and people let us know if they did not like that choice. And sometimes they viewed that as you are a bad leader because you are doing something that I think you should not do. And, you know, you just have to do your best. I think that, you know, the biggest problem that we had, and that every Worldcon, I believe, has, and that if anybody finds the answer to this one, oh my God, you'll save the world. It's communication. There's no matter, you feel as a chair like you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And you're constantly having people coming back and saying, why did you never say this to me? And if there was some way around that, if there was some way to communicate where everybody you were trying to communicate to got the message, and everybody who wanted to communicate to you was able to get their message through, you know, that would be spectacular. But that's not how the world works. So we ended up with a lot of things. You know, we've got a letter of complaint signed by 20 Hugo finalists listing a group of issues that they had, none of which were actually true, but nobody had checked with us first. We had just people feeling out of the loop, people upset that they didn't know things, people like, you know, the whole thing with the programming in Europe. I was so excited that that was happening. I had tried so hard to find somebody who would be willing to do that, to work with the convention, and we weren't able to find that, but they got together and put together their own programming outside of the convention. You know, I wish they could have come together earlier and talked to us, because we did want that programming. We just couldn't get any response that we could hear about getting that programming, and I don't think that they were getting any of the call that we were wanting that programming. And so it was just that miss of communication again. And I think pretty much 99% of the issues that we had could have been solved with communication. But I just don't know how to make communication better than it is. I think that communication is one of those areas where we all sort of fall into the insanity, the if one thing doesn't work, do it again. You know, we don't have ways to fix communication, and I wish that we did. I mean, I know that we're not the only convention that's had issues around communication, and I know that we won't be the last convention to ever have issues about communication, but I don't know the answer. You know, I felt like I was a good communicator going into this, and I felt like people understood what I was saying, but once I was, you know, neck deep in this stuff, I felt like the things that I was trying to get out to the fans weren't getting all the way there, and like everything was getting somewhere in the middle and then falling over. I wish I had the answers for that.
Well, we it's a two-way traffic thing. We also need to open emails that we receive and so on sometimes. but Norm, you're very from a huggy person. I think, if I remember correctly, last time I gave you a hug when I met you, or vice versa, I can't recall. Do you think that part of the communication, you went from an in-person event to a virtual event? Therefore, your staff meetings also went from in-person to virtual. Do you think that was an impact? Was that manageable?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it was actually used as rehearsals in many ways for trying to see how, like, we had one, effectively an all staff beforehand, didn't we? One, two, I don't know. That was done virtually, which was done on Discord and so on. So we could sort of try and see how all that was going to work. And then afterwards we said, well, this worked, this didn't work. So it was actually a really good way of rehearsing how these things might work. And in some ways, I would hesitate to say this could have been done even 5 years ago. You know, if there had been a world pandemic 5 years ago, I am unsure that the technology that we have would actually necessarily have existed. I don't think Zoom was around 5 years ago, and things like that. So, in many ways, some of what one of the things going into this 10 years ago was that I felt, and I think, you know, I think we all feel, is that to try and pass things forward in terms of, you know, obviously this is what this is about, as well as learning and so on. Although this is kind of a nice personal chat, but, you know, it's about, you know, pushing stuff forward so other people can make different mistakes. So, you know, there's always, you know, 2020 hindsight, wonderful. So
2020.
yeah, exactly. When it happened, 2020, and came up with, you know, New Zealand 2020, a perfect vision. It's like 2020, yeah, that's a cool year. But you know, that happens. We're talking to people, you know, Worldcons have had big things like this happen to them before, to a certain extent. I guess the World War II was probably, I guess, one of those things. And some of it is, sorry, I'm probably wandering off slightly from what you just asked, James, but these are thoughts. Some of it is resilience as well. Resilience, personally, I learned a lot about myself, for good or bad. You know, the problem is that the problem is that I'm unsure that I want to do this again. I say unsure, dear God, no. But you know, there's a lot of things you learn about yourself, but also how you hopefully can do better with these kinds of things in the future. But resilience for self is very important, self-care, but also the resilience of your people, because as in a volunteer event, as everyone, you know, everyone has their skin in the game. Everyone's here because we want conventions to succeed. You know, we believe that these are important things, you know, just if only for the social aspect, if only because, you know, we are social people, you know, we get together, we talk. But your people in your committee, your staff, your crew, whoever, you have to really try and do right by them, however that looks. And you know, there are areas that I know that I fell down on. I hope did well in some, better in others. You know, I think we all sort of have those things. But you know, for me, certainly from that March whatever was decision, it was incredible just feeling that support as well. You know, people were genuinely trying to come up with solutions and ways to do things, and you know, how to make this work as a thing. And it was hard. You know, I don't think anybody would say that it was a doddle, and nor, you know, nor should it have been. But you know, we had a committee, 20 people kind of thing, I think it was, actually 20, 25, and then a staff more of, I don't know the numbers. Linnell would probably know.
A lot of people.
Two or 300 people, all down the chain. And this is, you know, partly communication to be a thing. You know, siloing. You know, we've all heard about siloing of divisions. But I'm trying to recall anyone actually whining. I don't recall anyone whining. And I don't mean people didn't say it was hard, it was difficult, whatever. That's not whining. That is just a statement of fact. But the thing is that the thing. Also, people have to be able to vent. Let's face it. You know, God knows, Linnell and I have vented, you know, across to each other, because that's important to have a safe place that you can talk about and vent. But the support goes up and down. You know, I believe, you know, our intent was to try to make sure our people were supported from the top, And then we, to me, I think we always felt like the support from the people who were there and doing their job. It's glorious when you can say to someone, away you go, and away they go. Mind you, I have learned that I don't like to micromanage, but I need to not go the other way either and just let people go off into, here we go. But anyway, there we go. Sorry, that was a bit of a thing, but
no, it's okay. So Kelly, coming to you and moving on from that question, if you don't mind, how was the weekend itself?
It was
there was a weekend.
beautiful and terrible and exciting and upsetting and all of the things you can imagine all folded up. I think that you've had a similar experience yourself. When there's something happening that's right, it feels good, it's fulfilling, you're happy. When there's something happening that you don't even understand how this is happening, but you know that you're the guy who needs to stand up and say, I am so sorry this is happening, then, it can be very upsetting. But I really do feel that, everything I said was true. I know that I did get a little bit of flack from people, just like that my apologies weren't genuine, especially if the same issue happened again. But they were, and I don't know how. And that, I wish everybody could have come to Wellington so much. I've got a guest room. If you got, because you just stagger it a bit. Norman's got a guest room, so if we keep it down to no more than 5 at a time, we can cycle you all through over the next few years.
I can put mattresses on the floor as well.
So we've only about 4 minutes to go. No, continue. Sorry, Kelly. Don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, just I think for going forward, communication, try to solve that communication problem. Try to figure out 6 ways to say each thing and do them all. Almost everything could have been solved if the communication was just better, and I wish I knew how to do that.
Well, and I think that if we can next year, and if we get you to Lisbon somehow, I think we should continue this conversation. But I've got a couple of quick questions which I would like to just get to. Yep. I have a lot of questions, I'm afraid. I know we worked together on a number of different things. Favorite moments? Do you have any favorite moments, both of you?
Sorry. The thing is that I would have to include the entire 10 years in a lot of it. And, my favorite has been meeting actually these, amazing people. But to me, when I was at the start of the convention and I was able to watch the opening ceremony, I was sitting pretty much here and crying, because not the closing, but the opening, because that opening actually represented the end of that time. And then there's this tiny little sliver of the thing, and there was no concept beyond that point, of course, for me, because it was just a wall. But because the opening ceremony I thought was lovely. It was fun. It was, it sort of had some, it was,
one of my highlights could be like Jacinda Ardern said our names and thanked us.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I really appreciate it. We rush up to the end of our time. There are dozens of notes of positivity and encouragement and thanks going through the chat. There are also lots of questions which I'm afraid we just don't have time to get to, but I think the sentiment of support and love is coming through the chat, and that's very strong. As I say, I think if we can, we should talk to you again next year, and maybe allow you to reflect further and actually say that to you now, so you can think about that. But
No, absolutely. I will.
I just want to end on to you both. You both seem to feel strongly about mental health and also about self-care, and
personal experience.
Yeah, but just as we end now, can you tell us all why this is important to you yourself, as individuals?
Well, I mean, it's what you need to go. It's what you need to be whole. It's what you need to be a functional person. You can't break and fall on the floor and not have anything there for you. I mean, I'm happy to talk about things at any time. One thing that I will do is I will put together a little slideshow thing that won't actually be a slideshow. It will actually be a method of putting together a whole bunch of words in a way that I can rearrange them until they make sense. And then I'll try to find a way to get that out to anybody who wants to see it, about things we did and things we learned and stuff like that. And anybody is welcome to send me email. I do actually read all my email.
I can't make the same promise.
Go away for several weeks, and so when I was in the land without internet, I didn't get emails for a while. But yeah, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. I feel like we did some things right, we did some things wrong. I think that pretty much everybody does that, and yeah, I just want things to keep going, and I want us to be able to all be in the same big room again, drinking too much.
Mm. One of the things that just briefly sort of about the mental health thing is that one of the things over the last 5-10 years, whatever, is how to know yourself, how to know when you are not doing well. And it was starting to be able to recognize that I think is very important. The thing is, we aren't taught these things. We aren't taught that, how to recognize this about yourself, because we're all individuals. You need to, and you have to work it out for yourself to a certain extent, but also listen to other people when they say, you vanished offline for a week here, what's going on? And you have people you can talk to. But being self-aware, I think, is actually one of those things we don't do enough of. And that's very important for when that's a support for yourself, and you can't support other people unless, as someone in the chat said, put on your own air mask first, because it's very easy to, as I know sometimes I do this, to get into a mindset where you are trying to support, you're trying to do things for other people all the time. That's admirable, but you can kill yourself doing it. As for now, speaking about generally, to me, I wanted a Worldcon in New Zealand, nearly, but it has never been on my bucket list to be a Worldcon chair. I don't know, whatever. Is just, however, hopefully is the best way to have a Worldcon New Zealand. That's how that happened. Maybe it will happen physically in New Zealand again at some point. I don't know. Right now,
let me know when you want to do it. I'll give you a hand.
I'm fixing my house right now. Indeed. I'm doing stuff in my house that hasn't been done for 10 years. So yeah.
Yes, Janie Shea has just said that she's thrown you $20. Now, Janie, can you put us onto everyone, so everyone can see, and we can all wave to Norm and Kelly as we thank them and say goodbye. I don't know if that's possible, but we're very grateful for your time. We've gone a little bit over, but thank you very much indeed, and you just did a great job, and we really do appreciate it. And thank you.
Thanks everyone for putting your pictures on. It's really